2023 is on our doorstep and Steam recently released its 2022 Steam Replay. So I thought it would be the perfect time to rank every new game that I played in 2022. If you want to check out your own Steam Replay, you can find it here and there will be a link in the description as well. I think this list has a good mix from cozy to action adventure, from AAA to indie, so let's take a look at how the tier listing is going to work. D-tier games are going to be the ones that I would not pick up personally, and if I had a time machine, I would probably attempt to go back and stop myself from purchasing them. It doesn't mean that they're not great games, they're just ones that I wouldn't play again personally. My C-tier games are games that are okay, but I probably wouldn't recommend them to a friend. B-tier are games that I definitely enjoyed and I would recommend to the right person. A tier are games that I loved and I would recommend very broadly. And finally, S tier are games that are personal favourites and I would probably recommend to anyone. Okay, we're starting off with a big game here, Cult of the Lamb. I absolutely loved it. I streamed it when I was streaming over on Twitch. It had great interaction with community. It was so much fun. It really felt like a game that you were playing with other people without them actually playing it. Love the concept. I think I'm going to have to put this in S tier. I love the concept, love the art style. I don't know. Overall, a brilliant game. I bought merch for this game. I think that says a lot. If you're buying merch for a game, I bought a Cult of the Lamb t-shirt at PAX this year. I think it has to go in S tier. And I would recommend this. If you haven't played Cult of the Lamb, it might not seem like your kind of game. I promise, even if you're into cozy gaming, it has cozy gaming vibes. There are farming and lifestyle elements to this game as well as combat. Aperture Desk Job. I feel like it had cultural significance in the gaming world this year, even though it was a tiny game, and I think it would have been a better experience if you had played it on the Steam Deck, and I played it on PC because it was kind of built for the Steam Deck and to showcase the controls that you get with the Steam Deck. Still a fun game. The writing was amazing, hilarious. It's not a full game, it's kind of like a mini game really. I want to put it in A tier. I'm going to put it in A tier. I think if you had the Steam Deck experience, it could be S tier, and if it was like a fully fledged game on its own, yeah, I think it belongs in A tier. This is our first full cozy game, Dinkum, and I think I'm going to put it in D tier. I don't think it had anything super unique to it. It was attractive because it had the Australian wildlife. At least to me and the Australian audience that I've seen, we were attracted to it because of that fact. But I also had a lot of difficulties with this game, trying to figure out what my next step is, and it was super grindy to get materials. I ended up just kind of giving up on my quest because it was so grindy, and I felt like the time structure, like the days went too quickly for the amount of traversing that you had to do across the land. So I think because of the issues and the enjoyment level I had, it has to be our first DT game. Disney Dreamlight Valley, this is hard. I think it has to get points for being in early access. It's not fully released yet. It fully releases in 2023. It's going to be free to play. I would absolutely go and buy it again. I would recommend it broadly. Even in early I think I have to give it an A tier. I think if it was fully released, if it was bugless, then it would be an S tier game. I think it has everything that a cozy life farming sim needs, or it's going to have those things. There is definitely issues still, don't get me wrong. It's gonna have all the decorating, it's gonna have all the farming, it's gonna have all the characters, so I think it firmly belongs in A tier. Lost in Play was a little bit of a wild card this year for me. I hadn't really heard much about it until I played it, but I absolutely loved it. I think it could be played by almost literally anyone. If you're playing with young children, I would recommend sitting beside them because it is puzzly and it can get difficult. But the heartwarming story, the design, the gameplay, I think this is S tier. I didn't have any issues. I loved it. I have the playthrough up on my YouTube, I'm pretty sure. Was amazing. I do recommend. I just can't think of anything to fault Lost in Play. Like, it was a great experience. The price was good for the length of gameplay that you get. And I went back and played it multiple times, so it just belongs in S tier, I think. Madison. Madison is our first horror game on the list. Did super enjoy it. Would recommend to the right person. So I think that puts it in B tier. Did have a few issues where the levels weren't so linear and you kind of got stuck. I know a lot of people got stuck at a certain point on a certain puzzle that presents itself early in game that you're not supposed to do until later in the game without giving spoilers. And I watched a ton of streamers play this game and so many people got stuck on this, and not stuck in like a, oh, I realized I'm not supposed, like stuck for a long time. There are people who got stuck for hours. And I feel like that's such a frustrating point. And I know it's kind of like escapey escape game style and it's kind of meant to be like that, but I just think it was overwhelmingly frustrating when you got to points like that where you're working on the thing that's like not even what you're meant to be working on. It can get very confusing what you're supposed to be doing at certain points, so I think that's why it lands in B tier. But if you love horror games, you love puzzles, it would be a great game for you. The Mortuary Assistant is another horror game that was massive this year, but I think it belongs in A tier above Madison because I would more broadly recommend it to people. Even if you kind of just dipping your toes into the horror genre, you're working your day job as a mortuary assistant, and it has a very believable storyline with the addition of horror and jump scares. I think it has to be an A tier just for the fact that I didn't finish it. I did go back for a couple of shifts, but the replayability for me kind of wore thin, and that's the thing that stops it getting an S tier for me, but great horror game. The Quarry is hard for me to place because I feel like if I didn't stream this game, I would have had a completely different experience and would feel differently about it. I think I'm going to put it in B tier. I did stream this game when I was streaming over on Twitch, and it makes great audience interaction because you're doing the decision making, and at some points you can get chat involved in the decisions that you're making, and the game plays out differently depending on what you choose, so it's a unique experience every time you see someone play it. However, I did have some issues with some of the reactions. I remember this was an issue for some people. I did play this when it initially released, and I do think they fixed it, but I ended up having a character die because of these like glitches and issues, so that was frustrating when I played it. I think it firmly belongs in B tier because I wouldn't broadly recommend the Quarry. I would recommend it to the right kind of player. Multiversus. I didn't play this a ton. It's definitely not an S tier game. I would have to say maybe a B tier again. It's a standard fighting game. It brought in new characters to fighting games. It didn't do anything spectacularly well or better than other fighting games, and it did some things poorer. For one thing, I don't know if they fixed this now because it's been a while since I played it, but the damage percentage, say in Smash for example, the damage percentage is at the top of the screen. In Multiversus, it like followed the characters around and was kind of in the commotion of it all, and I just felt like it got in the way, and it's something I really didn't enjoy about Multiversus. So a solid family game. I feel like a lot of people could pick it up easily, not something that you play for a long time. It's in B tier. Strange Horticulture this year was like a unique gem for me because I think I discovered it through TikTok and I hadn't heard much about it, and I played it on stream and I absolutely loved it. It's an adorable game where you take care of a horticulture store, you categorize plants, but you're also unlocking the mystery of the town that you are in and like the land around you. And it has a little bit of the occult in it, and it has a little bit of like escape game mechanics where you're unlocking things and you're solving puzzles. It also has beautiful art style, and the soundtrack is amazing, especially when it rains when you're inside the store. This is a game that you could spend a lot of time on. I absolutely adored it. I would recommend it broadly. I'm tempted to put it in S tier. I'm going to put it in S tier. If you haven't played it, you should go play it. It's in my S tier. Stray is an automatic S tier. If you haven't heard of Stray, it was an indie game that was nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards, which I think is a really big deal. Stray was a cultural moment not just within the gaming world, but beyond that. It got people who weren't gamers to play a video game and fall in love with a video game. If you're not familiar with Stray, in Stray you play as a stray kitten who's trying to reunite with their family, and along the way you explore a post-apocalyptic world full of robots, and you try and unravel the story of what happened to this place, the segregation that has occurred, and is it possible for life to occur afterwards? I don't think Stray even needs a discussion about where it belongs, it just is in S tier. My Time at Sandrock, another cozy farming lifestyle game, I think squarely belongs in the C tier. I don't regret playing it because I did sink a lot of hours into this game, and it is all the things that a farming and lifestyle game should be. It is cute, it is cozy, it has a small town, it has relationship building, it has decorating, it has farming, it has all those good things. But I think it belongs in C tier because as a farming lifestyle sim, it wouldn't be the first game that I recommended to a friend for that style of game. And it is also kind of chaotic. There's a lot that's happening at the same time. You get a ton of story objectives at the same time, which is okay, but then on top of that, you have notice board requests that you have to keep up with. You have your farm ranking that you have to keep on top of, and then the story keeps progressing on top of you as you're working on something and you're getting closer to a goal. A sandstorm will blow into town and you're thrown into a cutscene in that day, and then you have to start working on something that's time-based. It can be a little chaotic, so that's why I will put it in C tier. Kirby's Dream Buffet. It hurts me to do this to a Kirby game, but a solid B tier game. Kirby's Dream Buffet is a party game. You can play with friends or you can also play online. In Kirby's Dream Buffet, you play a kind of Grand Prix, which is 4 stages of mini games. A couple of them are downhill races, and then you have a little battle platformer game as well. And the goal is just to collect strawberries, and you add up points, and the person with the most points at the end wins. It doesn't have any kind of story mode. It does have a lot of collectibles. It is a ton of fun to play, but it's not a game you're going to spend a lot of time with. Definitely a game you could pull out with friends or during Christmas with the family, so it's a solid B tier game. Another Kirby game, this time Kirby and the Forgotten Land, S tier for me. I feel like I'm weighting the scale to the S tier, but if a game deserves it, game deserves it. It has to go in S tier. The length of gameplay and the levels that you get. I spent so many hours on this game because I 100% completed it. There are also a ton of collectibles. There are a ton of extra challenging levels, so you don't have to do them for the storyline if you don't want to. S tier, would recommend to anyone. Pokemon Violet. Where do I put this? It hurts that you even have to consider putting a Pokemon game in the lower tiers. It was still a decent game. Even with its issues, I want to put it in A tier. I'm going to put it in A tier because I still would recommend Pokemon Scarlet and Violet broadly to a wide audience. If you're playing your very first Pokemon game, this is not the Pokemon game that I would recommend you start with. And all the issues that it has, and the fact that it lacks in the graphics department, and it felt like a very unfinished game on release, I'm putting it in A tier. Nintendo Switch Sports. This is tougher than you think it would be, because it's a great game, but I feel like it did worse than Wii Sports. I'm gonna put it in B tier, kind of like these other games here, Multiversus, Dream Buffet. Solid games, nothing special. Disappointing that it didn't have golf on release. It does have golf now. It came out as a free DLC, which is great. I love all the online play, and the online collectibles are a lot of fun as well. But there was nothing to amaze me about this game. It was just, so it belongs in B tier. Splatoon 3. I think a lot of people aren't going to agree with this, but I'm putting it in D tier. I bought Splatoon 3 when it released, and I have played a little bit of Splatoon 2, and I could just not get into it. I did not even find it that fun, and the controls, to me, were frustrating. I think given that I also play a lot of FPS games, that going and playing a somewhat FPS game on Nintendo Switch with the kind of controls that Splatoon 3 has is infuriating. And I also think at this point, Splatoon has such a strong fan base and hardcore players that the skill difference is immediately obvious. And it's not easy to come into as a new player in this edition of the game, and that's definitely the way I felt. And I would not go back and purchase this again if I had the choice, and I have not really picked it up since. Just Act Natural I had to include in this list because I played this with a group of my friends this year, and it came out this year. I'm gonna have to put it in C tier because I have not picked it up again. It was a lot of fun, but it was kind of like a one-time, we'll play this game, it's a laugh, and then that's it. In Just Act Natural, you play with friends and someone is the spotter and the rest of the people are basically imposters trying to fit in with the natural environment and the NPCs so they don't get spotted. And that's the whole premise of the game. It is a lot of fun if you want to laugh, if you want a party game, if you want an online game to play with friends. It is fun, but kind of a one-time thing for me. That's why it's in the C tier. Long Vinter. You might think this looks like Animal Crossing, and there is a reason why it does kind of look like Animal Crossing. I am putting Long Vinter in C tier because it's not fully fleshed out. I do believe it's still in early access. It released in early access and it's still there. It doesn't feel like it has the player base that it needs to be successful. Long Vinter is a server-based game where you can have, I think, up to 40 people on an island. You're collecting resources, building houses, meeting objectives. It's basically like a multiplayer Animal Crossing, but there's weapons involved. I did stream it on YouTube. I have a video up if you're interested in checking it out. It has potential. Currently in C tier, but it has potential to move up further. Little Witch in the Woods for me is another C tier game this year. I think I had too much expectation for this game going in. I think one thing I didn't like is how much dialogue this game has. It takes a long time to even get to like a playable area because of the dialogue, and it's not something that I usually enjoy in games for me personally. The art style is gorgeous, and I love the concept of rebuilding this old witchy town, but I just couldn't get into it. I did try and play it multiple sessions. I couldn't really get into it that much. I think it's for a very specific kind of player, and that's okay. It belongs to a very specific niche and a very specific genre. And if that's the kind of game you like, then that's cool. But for me, it's in C tier. Sonic Frontiers didn't hit as hard as I thought it was going to hit. And I hope some people agree with me. I do love that we had like this open world concept game for a Sonic game, but it kind of fell short to me. It's enjoyable. I played a lot of it. I would recommend it to certain people. I'm going to put it in B tier. It just was missing something, and I can't put my finger on it. It just doesn't hit those higher tiers for me. A Little to the Left is gonna have to go into an A tier for me. I would recommend it broadly, even though it's a very specific playstyle in organizing and tidying. I think anyone could pick this game up for a little while and enjoy it. They won't necessarily go back to it. I went back to it a lot of time because you have your daily tidies that you get to organize. It's not S tier because it's not for everyone, but it does what it does very well. To me, A Little to the Left is definitely worth picking up at least once, so that's what puts it in A tier. Islets, I loved Islets this year, but I think it's for a very specific kind of player. It's a Metroidvania platformer game where you unlock different areas of different islands. You're trying to kind of rebuild the land, bring it all back together. You're fighting off monsters. It does see you replaying boss levels a little bit as you kind of learn what their maneuvers are. And I think certain people would find this game very frustrating and certain people would absolutely love this game. I personally really enjoyed it, but I think it's for a specific player. That's why it's in B tier. But I absolutely love the graphic design and the characters in this game. It did kind of give me a little bit of Spirited Away vibes at certain points. An adorable game, an adorable story. I haven't quite finished this game yet either, which is probably why I'm putting it in B tier, because even though I've gone back to it many times, I have not completed it yet. So sitting in B tier. Tinykin, another game I absolutely love, and I have recently finished this game. A tier. I am surprised that Tinykin didn't blow up more this year. I'm not sure why. It somehow kind of flew under the radar. I would consider it a cozy game. It is played at your own pace. You explore real-life locations in this one home and you go from room to room. You collect these little guys called Tinykin that have their own abilities that will help you on your way through puzzles and traversing the world. If you like Pikmin or you're looking forward to the new Pikmin game, definitely recommend checking out Tinykin in the time being because it's a lot of fun. It's very similar, and I'm just surprised it wasn't more popular and didn't get more interest this year. And this game has hours and hours of gameplay, like hours, especially if you want to 100% complete this game. Hours. Worth it. Worth your money, Tinykin. Definitely check it out. Wylde Flowers. I feel like the games that I'm ranking lower are controversial. Wylde Flowers to me is a little bit D tier. To me, Wylde Flowers was using a lot of elements we've already seen in games of this genre, and the pace was a lot slower or a lot more of a struggle to get through for me, and I could never quite get the pacing of the days right. I do know you can control how fast a day goes in settings, and I felt like I was either running around and running out of time to get things done that I wanted to do within a day's frame, or the days were just dragging and I didn't have enough to do. And I think it's because I was an early game. I also think the farming felt very slow. Like I was waiting a long time to farm things so that I could progress quest lines. And maybe it's just because I didn't stick with it long enough. If I had stuck with it a little bit longer, I might have found it a bit different. But I probably won't be picking this up again. And it wouldn't be the first game in this genre that I would recommend to people to play. And then the final game, Slime Rancher 2. And this pains me, but I think I have to put it in D tier as well. And this hurts because I love the first Slime Rancher and I do love Slime Rancher 2. Slime Rancher 2 is basically just Slime Rancher 1. In times in Slime Rancher 2, I even found myself thinking, hey, what happened to like this upgrade? Didn't I have this upgrade? And then realizing that I didn't have that upgrade and I actually had that in the first Slime Rancher, and that's why I was getting confused. And that's when I knew that it didn't really have anything that made it that much more unique. I loved exploring new landscapes, don't get me wrong, and I think that's because I played the first Slime Rancher not that long ago, whereas other people have been waiting a long time for the second Slime Rancher. So don't get me wrong, a great game. If you hadn't played the first Slime Rancher, I would recommend Slime Rancher 2. But if you have recently played the first Slime Rancher, I'd be like, you're not really missing much in the second unless you unless it was absolutely your favorite game. It could be a game that you miss and you don't miss much. So that is my tier list, and I feel like there's going to be some controversial opinions in here and people might not agree with me. This has probably turned into one of my longer videos, so if you're here to the end, thank you so much. Let me know what your favorite games were that you played in 2022 and if you agree or disagree with this tier list. If you want to see what games I'm most looking forward to in 2023, stay tuned to my channel because I have a video coming up very, very shortly to cover this. Enjoy the rest of your 2022 and hopefully I'll see you in 2023.